Today, oh my God, wouldn't it have been great to know that? I can't believe we just uncovered that right now, which is the number one thing I said we skipped, right? Happy Monday, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. Today, we are going to dive into a call review. All of last week, we spent a lot of time focusing on the needs gap, right? We really want to try to figure out where our current customers are compared to where they want to be. So that way they have a greater sense of urgency to want to close that gap and finally make a change. If you are just now finding this channel, my name is Dana Neeson. I run a telesales team for Tailored Legacy. We sell final expense insurance over the phone with one carrier. My job is to help you have stronger, more sophisticated sales conversations. And if you could always do me a favor, if you find value from this video, please give it a like. And if you learn anything, please post it in the comments. I always love to hear from you. All right, so today's call review is going to run a little bit different. We're going to listen to part of the call, but then instead of me giving you the immediate answers to my analysis of what we just heard, I'm going to run it in a similar format as if I had you on a live or if I had my team here. I'm going to ask questions based on the type of answers I'm hoping to get, and then I want you to try to answer those questions and see if it matches the feedback that I'm going to give you. So we're going to learn as if you were here with me. And if you got everything right, let me know. If you struggled, let me know too. Either way, let's make this as interactive of an experience as possible. And we'll try to make these call reviews even more valuable than they already have been.
Hey, thank you. Hey, Justin.
Yes?
Hi, my name's Wallace. I'm a licensed agent, and I just need to verify some information before we proceed. What state are you in?
Wisconsin.
Okay. And what's your date of birth? Alrighty. All right, Justin. Now, I need to let you know that our call may be monitored and recorded today for quality assurance. And just out of curiosity, I mean, what caused you to start looking to put some coverage in place?
Well, I'm just looking for a little bit of coverage to help cover the inevitable funeral expense.
Mm-hmm.
First opportunity to pause and ask a clarifying question. He just said, I'm looking for something to cover the inevitable funeral expense. And we don't know what the agent's going to say, but think about maybe a clarifying question that you can get the customer to expand a little bit more on his answer. I would probably say here, tell me a little bit more about that. Very simple. Just put the ball back in the customer's court and just get them to keep talking. That's the goal.
Understood. Yeah. And would this just be for yourself or for anyone else as well?
Myself and my wife.
Okay. What's your wife's name?
Polly, it's spelled with a P.
Okay. And just in case, is she available?
At the moment, she's not.
No? Okay. No worries. So before I go into what we do, I just have a few questions I'd like to ask you so I can get a better understanding of what you might be looking for, you and your wife, and just to make sure that I can help you in the first place. Would that be okay?
Sure.
Okay. So what type of protection right now do you have currently, just in case something were to happen to you?
Right now, what I have is $12,000 in a separate savings account.
Okay. Now, is that specifically put in place for like final expenses, or is that like also for living and just in case type of stuff?
No, we put that away. We put that away for funeral expense.
Oh wow, okay. Now, with that said, I mean,
But that's split
how
between the two of us.
okay, understood. And with that said, I mean, how long have you been looking to put something in place?
Oh, I look off and on, but I guess the biggest motivation is a relative of mine lives next door, who's 52, died on Easter.
Sorry to hear that.
And I started thinking about what she has to, the costs that she had to incur, and I thought, what we have may not be enough.
Now, are you going to have like a more traditional style burial or a cremation?
We're going to each have a cremation.
Cremation. Now, would that include like a viewing beforehand or like a wake?
Probably for my wife, for myself, I would have none of that. I just have my daughters and for a small family service.
Okay. And then, with that said, God, would it, so like whoever would pass first, I mean, I'm sure that,
Okay, we're going to pause here again. So we know some really, really important key pieces of information that I would like some clarification on to really, again, develop that needs gap, which is what we're looking for. So we know he has $12,000 in savings that's split between the two of them. We know that a neighbor just died who was 52, and we know that it was much more expensive than I think what he was anticipating, and he may not think he has enough. So that's the need, right? That is the need. He does not think he has enough, but the gap is here. I need to get him to talk about that so the gap gets real big. And so asking clarifying questions here to try to understand like where he's at compared to where he wants to be. What type of clarifying questions would you need to ask to uncover exactly what that needs gap might be? Okay, so think about what type of clarifying questions would you have to ask, because where I think this agent is now going right into who's going to be in charge of handling the arrangements and going kind of transitioning into more of the emotional part of our script. But you got to stay here a little bit longer, right? We're not ready yet to leave the first part of discovery, which is all like the patient intake questions that I call it, and all learning about the history, because that is where you're developing that needs gap. Listening to these types of training calls is helpful when you get on the phone with people, because you don't have time to pause and have a discussion about what the customer just told you so that you can come back with asking better questions, right? It's happening in real time. So you either do it or you don't do it, and you got to move on. Okay, so now that you've had a moment to kind of think about some clarifying questions, definitely need to ask, could I ask how much, or do you know how much your neighbor's funeral did cost, right? Because if he doesn't think he has enough, he probably has an idea of how much it costs. So let's talk about that, right? A neighbor is in this literally the same area, same zip code. So, and this is happening now, maybe not was what's going to happen in 5 or 10 years from now. We just don't, it's going to only go up, right? So I 100% need to know how much the neighbor was charged. And I need to know for what type of service. If any details we can get about that is possible. Because that's going to compare where he's at to where he thinks he needs, right? Or where he wants to be. The other thing that we uncovered here was the urgency, right? The agent had asked, how long have you been looking? And he said, well, kind of off and on, but really what got me thinking about it now was the neighbor situation, but we needed to stay there, right? And when you were looking off and on, like, what did you find? Like, what prevented you from increasing your protection above and beyond the $12,000 you have saved? I need to get him to tell me that it was too expensive, right? Which is probably what happened. Probably he couldn't justify the coverage amount compared to the payment, and so he just put it off. But the problem is if you keep saving and you can't save at the rate that you need in order to pay for everything before you pass, then there isn't enough there, right? So here's where we have to play this doubt. Can you save on your own fast enough compared to putting something in place to ease that burden in the event something happens sooner than later? And that's where the sale is going to take place, right there. And if we don't stay there and explore that, then that urgency isn't going to be there. And we already have a situation where the wife isn't present. And so what you also have to understand is during the rest of this call, we have to act as if the wife is here by asking things like, now, if your wife were here, what do you think she would say? Do you think she'd like the idea of having X, Y, and Z? Or do you think she likes the idea of a policy that's never going to cancel? Like, so you have to pretend as if the wife was there so that when we get to the end, he doesn't need to really talk to the wife because he's already told us what he thinks his wife is going to say. Okay, so that's the thought process. This is where you need to be in the first 5 minutes of your call so you know where to go. Let's keep playing.
Like, say if you were to pass, that your wife would be taking care of everything at that time and vice versa?
Right.
Okay. Now, you did say you had experience with having to deal with the expenses because of a relative that lived next door, I believe you were saying?
Yep.
And did they have a cremation or like a traditional funeral?
He had a cremation, yes. Mm-hmm.
Cremation.
Good.
How much did that go for?
Fantastic. I'm so happy he went back. This is great.
Per run.
I think my daughter paid $8,500 for this, included the viewing and some service at the funeral home, and I know that's what she paid.
Okay. All right. So between the both of you, you have like the $12,000 in savings for specifically put towards.
Well, that's what we have set aside.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so you're probably looking to add maybe about $4,000 to $5,000 just in case for both of you, like a smaller plan. I'm assuming that's what you're hoping for.
Yeah, $4,000 or $5,000 each.
Each, right.
Right, $4,000 to $5,000 each. Okay. All right. Now, other than that, is there any other expenses you're concerned about?
No, that's it.
Okay. All right. All right, perfect.
I need new tires for my.
So he did half of what we just said, right? So he got an idea of what the cost was for the neighbor, $8,500. We know that he only has about $6,000 per person. So there's definitely a deficit there. Plus he's thinking the cost will probably go up in the future. What we didn't do, what we forgot to do, was kind of ask about his experience of what he's found when he was off and on in his search and what prevented him from putting something in place before. Even though there's more urgency now, you still have to be able to justify the cost. And if we don't know what he thought was too expensive before, then we can't use that information when we get to education. Now, we're going to have to be generic unless he somehow gets that information out of him when we get to that section. Also, we want to ask the consequence question, right? So I'm hoping he asked the consequence question. So you have 12,000. This is what it would sound like. So you have 12,000 in place right now, 6,000 for each of you. You saw that it cost about $8,500 for your neighbors. And so there's a little bit of a deficit there. You've been looking on and off for some time. but there's missing information here that I don't have, right? I guess, have you thought about what would happen if you weren't able to get some additional coverage that felt affordable for you and your wife, and you just continued to save? I mean, what would you do then? That's kind of how I would position this consequence question, because I need to know what he's going to be okay falling back on.
One of my cars, but you probably can't help with that.
That's a different. That's a different agent.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. All right, so now I'm going to go over what we do so you can understand it and determine, whether or not it's a good fit for you. Then I'll ask you some health questions to figure out what you qualify for, and then finally we'll go over a range of options and pricing, and you just let me know what you like to do next. Does that sound fair?
Sure.
All right. So our agency, we represent Lincoln Heritage Life Insurance Company. We've been providing final expense insurance and funeral protection to families for the last 60 years. We also specialize working with seniors who are living on a fixed income, which means all of our programs are very customized. Now, Justin, are you also living on a fixed income like Social Security or disability?
We both have Social Security checks, and I have a retirement check from my job.
Oh, okay. Okay, perfect. So I'm assuming you have, and that gets deposited into like a checking or savings?
It's in the savings account.
In the savings. Okay, yeah. And I'm just asking just basically because to qualify for our program, we do auto draft, so we would require like a bank account. That's all. Some folks on.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah,
You mean for premium payment?
Exactly. It's just the safest way to move forward, like long term. Yeah, because you know how cards are. Because some people have the Direct Express card, and unfortunately we can't accept that unless they do like 6-month payments at a time. But either way.
No, I have other.
Exactly.
My power and phone bill and stuff like that are automatic withdrawals.
Yeah.
That's
now,
from
with
the
that
checking
said,
account.
Okay, gotcha. So with that said, it's very important to me that we find something that makes sense and feels comfortable, because if you can't afford to make the payments and the policy cancels, then it's not going to do your family any good anyways, right? Now,
right.
The first thing I want to let you know is that Lincoln Heritage, we only provide permanent whole life protection as opposed to term. Now, do you happen to know the difference between the two, or has anybody ever explained that to you before?
I do know the difference.
Could you kind of like explain it to me just so I know we're on the same page?
I mean, my understanding of it, I understand what a term is. You pick a term, say 10 years, and at the end of 10 years, the insurance company asks you to write a new term, or else you just end it.
Yeah, and then also to expand on that, when that term ends, you have to basically start over from scratch. It's not like the original starting that from the health conditions or health whatever, or even age. It's basically starting over from scratch. As we get older as well, they're very strict on health conditions. Any health, even diabetes, they frown upon that. Sometimes they'll deny you over that a lot of times, especially when we get older. And the worst part about it is once you turn 80, it basically cancels forever because you become uninsurable because of your age. So that's term in a nutshell, basically. Whole life, once you're approved.
So let's think about the explanation of that, which I personally think that he did a good job. I like that he asked the customer to give him his understanding of the difference. That engages the customer to have a two-way conversation, right? It's not just the agent just talking the whole time without giving any room or space for the customer. However, just because we explained the facts doesn't mean the customer doesn't want it. right? I mean, can't make any assumptions. As obvious as you think it is, it never is. So, a simple as, again, not getting the history of what he has or hasn't found when he was looking off and on is really hurting this section here. We can't refer to anything, which is a big, big mistake. And we didn't get anything from him here either as well. But even as simple as, so knowing that, do you see how maybe a temporary policy that only lasts so many years might not be the best option when it comes to protecting you and your wife when you pass? Yes, I do. Okay. And then, tell me why you feel that way. Could be an option depending on what he says, if he chooses to expand on his own answer or not. But just because you guys talked about what it is, it doesn't mean the customer doesn't want it, right? So it's really important to clarify that.
The price can never increase on you ever. The coverage can never decrease on you, and it's permanent. So they don't provide as much as the term policies that you see out there. The 50,000, 100,000, a million. That some people get,
Right.
Especially when they're older. These are specifically designed. Whole life policies specifically designed to cover final expenses or funeral costs because it's permanent and it's going to last for your whole life. Okay. Now, is this the type of policy you're looking for? Is the whole life compared to term?
I'm looking for whole life.
Whole life? Okay, perfect. Now, there's a lot of whole.
Okay. This also would have been a really good moment if you forgot to go back. So you're looking for whole life. Is that kind of what you found when you were looking off and on for the last year or so? Kind of what prevented you from wanting to put something in place back then? You got to get that out, right? Because whatever objection he gave to not get it before is going to be a similar objection to what this agent is going to get now. And we have to be able to speak to it and overcome it here, right? Because if he would have said it was too much for the coverage, like whatever it is, we have an opportunity to say that part's not going to change, right? The longer you wait to put something in place, the more expensive it will continue to get. And that justification between the price and the coverage amount is going to start shrinking. And, are you going to be okay with that? Have you already sort of come to the conclusion that the coverage amount might not make sense if you live, another 10 years, but at least you're putting something in place to backstop what you have already saved, right? That conversation needs to happen now, not after you give quotes.
Life companies out there, right? And price wise, we fluctuate anywhere $5 to $10 up, plus or minus, to be honest with you. Where we kind of stand out is our benefits that we provide. Every Lincoln Heritage policy owner, they do get enrolled to this program that we provide for free. It's free for you, and it's also free for your family. So basically, we work with a nonprofit organization. They're called the Funeral Consumer Guardian Society. They've been they're a family-run business, and they've been doing business as funeral directors or in the funeral industry going back to the 1800s, okay, like way back. So they pretty much seen it all. They know all the changes that happened in the funeral industry. They know how corrupt and how unregulated it became back in the late 80s and early 90s when big corporations started taking over. Basically increasing all the costs on everything, all the services and all the items by like 500 to 600%. That's why, your family member had that $8,500 price tag, for everything. It's just kind of crazy, for just a cremation. What the costs are nowadays, in some funeral homes. So basically, they pretty much seen it all. They know how difficult and how how frustrating the whole process could be for families. And they're basically here to provide you and your family with two things. Well, basically three, right? The first thing is, for you, it's peace of mind.
One thing I'm hearing a lot of, and first of all, this is not how the script reads at this point. I'm hearing a lot of just very kind of more monotone speak. We're doing a lot of talking. There's a lot of you knows and ums, which make this agent not sound as engaging as he could. And I think the more we talk, as you can listen to this, the more we're going to start losing the customer's interest. And this is what happens when you get on calls and you're just doing a lot of talking. You tend to tune out. The more you talk, the more the customer is getting bored, and the higher the chances are that they're going to ask for a price. And so we have to be able to engage people through questions and answers. And this is not, this part is not how the script is written.
And then for your family, it's basically they have the ability to actually advance the money to your family within 24 hours after you pass, directly to their bank account. And this is without Lincoln having to wait to receive the death certificate. Not sure if you know this or not, but basically all life insurance companies, they have to wait for the death certificate to be received. And that's basically what starts the process, to file the claim. And then once they process it and then finally approve it, then that's when the claim is finally paid out to the family members. Usually it's 24 to 48 hours after that. The whole process could take anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks.
Okay, so we're still talking, not asking questions, not engaging the customer. And also, I want you to think about what the agent did here in regards to how we presented the solution and the problem. So the best way to create a need or to do a problem awareness type situation is you have to always start with the problem first. Then you have to identify with the customer, do they in fact think it's a problem? That creates a needs gap. Once we uncover what the problem is, then we come in and offer the solution. And what the agent did here, this is just talking about a sales process. This is not really talking about a script. So anytime you're going to offer a feature and a benefit, it needs to be attached to some sort of problem to make that feature and a benefit more powerful. And kind of what happened here is he presented the solution first and then kind of went back and then uncovered the problem, which is what he's doing now. But again, this is not how it's written. And I don't hear the customer doing any talking. And this is a big, big warning sign right now that we need the customers involved in the process the entire time.
On average, by law, it could take up to 6 months, but on average, 2 to 6 weeks, okay, with any funeral home. Or I'm sorry, with any life insurance company out there. Now, typically, the funeral homes need to get paid now, or else they'll start charging the family like a daily storage fee. So they definitely want their money right away, as soon as possible, at least. So they'll, in some circumstances, they'll ask the family if they had if the loved one had a life insurance policy, right?
Right.
Because they ask that because, for one, they'll tell the family, well, we if you go ahead and assign that policy over to us, we could go ahead and get started with everything, so you don't have to come out of pocket anything extra or get a daily charge, and then anything left over after everything's done, we'll go ahead and just write you a check. Okay. Unfortunately, once that policy's in their hands, a lot of times the price does tend to increase.
Okay, so that's a perfect example right here. There's so many things that I could speak to in this part of the call, but when you have an answer to a problem, it's so much more powerful when you can try to get the customer to give you the answer. So what the agent just said was, unfortunately, once you hand over a policy or assign it over to a funeral home, they charge more, I think is basically what he said. As opposed to, so what do you think happens if your wife was to assign that policy over to the funeral home? And you got to get the customer to say, well, it probably goes up. Exactly, right? Not only are you now having a back and forth conversation, but when they say things like that, it means more. They're going to remember it. You are engaging a completely different part of their brain. And hopefully, as you're listening to this, you can hear that when it's just a one-sided conversation, it's really hard to stay focused. You're not even the customer, right? You know this information. You've heard it many times. And so think about the customer experience now. A lot of this is leading up to, I need to talk to my wife, as opposed to creating that there's so much urgency where he's like, I have no choice but to protect my wife and put something like this in place. Just because we're going about this in more of a pitch mode as opposed to question answer based mode.
Or it's like the cost on the items and services. So basically we have, Funeral Consumer Guardian Society on the family side, so we don't let that happen to them. Okay. So the second thing we will do.
What is the question that we always want to ask every time we say something of importance like this? And you got to know, once you say something, there is always a question that I have said 100 times on this channel, right? So we just presented something, even though it wasn't exactly in the most perfect way, we just presented a problem and a solution. The customer hasn't been doing really any talking. So before he moves on to the second thing, now, do you like the idea of that? Do you think that if you had something like this to protect your wife, would that be of a benefit to her? Now, if your wife were here, what do you think she would say? Do you think she would like the idea of knowing, X, Y, and Z, like involve them in liking or not liking the program? When you skip that part and you just stay in autopilot and go from one important thing to the next, you're literally walking yourself into, I want to think about it or talk to someone.
Is basically we'll become an advocate for your family to make sure they're not taken advantage of or get overcharged for anything associated with your cremations. Okay. So this is how it works, basically. When you get your policy in the mail, you'll receive a few ID cards and a final wishes guide. Okay. Simply pass those ID cards to the ones that are going to be taken, to your wife and yourself, vice versa, and to anyone else that would possibly be there at that time to help, right? Maybe one of your kids. So the ID cards are very special. They're laminated. They're the size of a debit card, or a business card that can be kept in the wallet or purse. They'll have your policy number on it, the name of the company, and FCGS and a 24-hour number that your family will need to call once you do pass, right? So when we do get the call from your family member, we will send some paperwork over for them to sign. They'll send it back to us, and then we'll go ahead and advance that money directly to their bank account within 24 hours and not like weeks or months like they will have to wait, with any other insurance company. Now, Justin, now that you know your family will get paid right away, how will this, in what way will this help them?
Well, it's not something I was too awfully concerned about.
See that? So if we introduce a problem and we don't know that it's a problem for our customer, the solution means nothing. So we just went on and on and on and on about a solution or a benefit that is of no importance to the customer, or we didn't do it in a way that's engaging him or that he understands it. This is a huge problem.
Okay. Of course. Well, that's one thing that's one piece of the puzzle for the bigger picture that I'll get to, because that is part of the process of the next step. Okay. So the next step is we'll refer to your final wishes guide. Basically, you just fill this guide out, letting us know exactly what you want to have happen when that time comes. This guide is basically put in place for any confusion or any bickering or any fighting with family members that happens sometimes, so we just try to avoid that. But the very next thing after that is we'll instruct your family member to, uh, for them to get the invoice or the bill from the funeral home, and then like take a picture of it basically, and have them send it to us via like text or email, right? Whatever's easier for them. So the guardians will then review it, making sure all the charges are legit. There's basically like no overcharges or overtaxed items. They'll review everything according to the funeral laws. We'll take note of any discrepancies on the bill and also discuss with the family all the services that are outlined, just to make sure that they want them all to be there or included, right? Anything that they don't, we'll just go ahead and take note of that as well. Then we'll go ahead and, a step further and basically price shop 3 to 4 other funeral homes in the area, just to get quotes for the exact same services that the funeral home is charging your family, right? The one they're going with. And even if they have a funeral home, that you have a funeral home that's been in the family for generations, this is just part of a negotiation tactic, right? To try to get that price lowered for them. So the guardians will then take, all that information that they gathered, then jump on a conference call with your family, along with the funeral director, basically to discuss any of the non-wanted services, first of all, any discrepancies and any overcharges to basically get them all removed or lowered. Okay. We will then negotiate all the items involved because we also have relationships with all the suppliers, of all the items that are sold in the funeral homes, where we can actually get them at wholesale price for your family. Okay. Then we will share all those quotes that we got from the lowest cost funeral home, basically, just to let them know that the family does have an option for a cheaper cost, and simply, we'll ask that director, if they can either, price match that cost or at least come close, so the family doesn't have to go anywhere else or out of their way to go anywhere else, which in turn will, save your family some extra money. And of course, 9 times out of 10, the director will either come close or match that quote because, they don't want to lose out on any commissions because that's what they work off of, commissions, which will literally save your family even more money. So that's all included. That's pretty cool, right? You like that idea?
It's an interesting idea.
Yeah. So what does this all mean to you? It's a few things, right? So first of all, basically knowing that your family will get paid right away, which is usually a big deal, right? It saves them from getting taken advantage of from the funeral homes by assigning that policy over to them. Now, you also have that peace of mind knowing that, we won't let your family get taken advantage of by any funeral home director. The third thing is knowing that, your family will have a true expert by their side throughout the entire start to finish process whenever they need them. And finally, knowing that you don't need to have as big of a policy compared to any other company because we're literally going to save your family thousands on the cost of your cremation, which literally means like a $10,000 policy with anybody else would mean the exact same thing as a $5,000 policy with us. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it does.
Okay, so as a matter of fact, we do have like a database, mostly current, up to date as far as what the prices are looking at.
That from the customer, I think he was getting annoyed and he was getting ready for him to just move on. Unfortunately, I do not think this was the best explanation, engagement of FCGS from an agent customer perspective, but I think this is a very common area that agents struggle with. So let's go down to the end and hear the objection that we got.
Coverage amounts here. And Now your protection plan, it also includes, additional coverage for your family if you pass away from an accident. Because just like we said earlier, I mean, we don't know when our time will pay your family an small additional cost, but it's if it makes sense or not. So, and then also funeral consumer guardians included with that. So an additional $4,000 for you, Justin, would be a monthly cost of $71.92. Okay, and that includes that extra 10. So without that, the accidental would be $61.92. Okay. What are your thoughts on that?
That seems awful high.
And it seems awful high because we did not know what we were walking into, right? Just explaining term versus whole life on a generic set is not good enough when we don't understand the experiences that he had before that prevented him from doing it in the past. I already knew this was going to be the objection, and it's exactly the objection that we got.
But I'd have to look it over before I could really make a good decision, and I'd have to ask my daughter what she thinks.
Is she the one that's going to be paying for this, or?
Pardon me?
Is she going to be the one helping to pay for this? Or pay for it?
She's sort of my financial advisor. You know.
Oh, I see. Okay. I mean, well, as far as everything that I explained to you about what we offer,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you like the benefits that we offer? What kind of stood out for you, if anything?
Well, I don't understand all of it, and I need to see this on paper so I could read through it, so she could read through it, make sure we understand what we're talking about here.
Yeah. And that happened because we did all the talking and not enough engaging, didn't probe to find the value in some of the problems. It was very confusing to listen to, as you find on several of these calls that we play on this channel. Usually I'm never picking out these calls in advance. I have no idea what we're going to get until we get it. And same was with this call. I just picked it randomly. I didn't know what we were going to get.
But am I to understand that this is a policy for me or a policy for both of us?
This would just be for you, and then your wife.
Just
would
for
be
me.
Right, exactly. And then your wife would.
She would have to get her own policy.
Exactly. I mean, it would
She
be
would
a
be on
related
the-
app or a connected application. So, but it would be like two different applications. Yeah. So, and of course, she's going to
I
be
see.
cheaper no matter what. Yeah. It's just males being male, 77, and in Wisconsin, just it's a little bit more expensive. Every birth date, the price does go up, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. And like I said, I mean, we're all pretty much close in price as far as a specific whole life company where there's not going to be any funny business down the road. Whole life permanent. It's just pretty much this, because we're all federally regulated. We're pretty much close in price. So that's what you're looking at. I mean, if you wanted to, because I know you have that 12,000 put in place. I mean, just for the benefits, say if you were just to get coverage for 3,000 in coverage, you're looking at $47.19 or $47.19 without the accidental, just to put something in place. And if you were just to put one unit of accidental, which is 5,000.
So what we're doing here, this is very interesting to break down. So he started off the objection handling sequence by trying to go back to, well, is this even something you want to have? And the guy couldn't answer it. He was just confused. And so because we didn't do that good of a job in helping him understand the value, if any, of what we provide, now we have no choice but to go back to logic-based thinking, which is renegotiating on the price by changing things up. Unfortunately, the decision is not going to be made here because he still really doesn't understand it from both a life insurance perspective as well as the value that the policy provides.
Extra, if you were to get in an accident, automobile is 10,000 if you were to pass. And the common carriers that I said, that I mentioned, the plane, train, bus, boat, taxi, Uber, or Lyft. If you were to pass from that, that's 20,000 extra for your family. It also includes 1,000 to be given to your family just in case you pass like 200 miles away from home or more. So all that's included as well. So that's only $2 extra, and that would bring your cost for 3,000 in coverage for $49.19. Does that make more sense to you to just lower it a little bit from 4,000 to 3,000? I know that's a big jump, right? That's
Yeah.
about $20.
Well, what I'm thinking about here is you're paying $50 a month. You're it's $600 a year. And
He's doing the
it doesn't
math.
seem like there's much coverage for $600. But I don't know. Like I said, I'd have to have her look at it.
For the $61 or
So-
the $47?
If you, either one, but if I can't do anything unless I see an offer in writing. I'm not going to buy insurance over the telephone.
I see. Yeah. So,
Okay, so if you don't have a good handle on the sales process, you're going to take that objection and your only focus is going to be, how do I overcome someone that says they don't want to buy insurance over the phone? But what you're failing to realize is that is not the true objection. He just isn't ready. He doesn't see the value. He's doing the math. This is what I said was going to happen in the very beginning of the call, right? People will justify changing their behavior if they see value in what they're going to buy. They won't need to talk to someone. They won't need to get something in the mail. Like all of this stuff that's happening right now is we walked ourselves right into it by doing too much talking. It's not because that's not the objection. It's not, I don't do business over the phone. If that was the objection, he would have said, yes, this sounds great. Let's do it. Let's move forward. But I don't want to do business over the phone, right? That's not what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with total hesitation on so many different levels. And then we're just going to grab onto the I don't do business over the phone to get rid of you. That's what's happening here.
basically, that's kind of like where we positioned ourselves to ever since like COVID. It basically, and most other insurance companies nowadays, a lot of them are doing business over the phone. It's just more practical like
I understand all the stuff that goes on over the phone, but I need to see some kind of hard copy to see whether what I'm hearing over the phone is on paper.
Of course, yeah. I mean, the only thing I can really send over is the company details and what we offer, and some links, and some links to like Funeral Consumer Guardian Society and what they offer and everything like that. I mean, let me ask you something though, Justin. I mean, is this something that you would want to have in place? For your family?
I'm working to get something in place. You're the third person I've talked to today.
Today, oh my God, wouldn't it have been great to know that? I can't believe we just uncovered that right now, which is the number one thing I said we skipped, right? Which is, I've paused this video halfway through to do some stuff and have come back. So for me, this video has been a compilation of an entire day. And I know there were two things that we had to make sure that we went back to. One of them he did go back to, and the other one he didn't, which was the how long have you been looking? And at that point, all we heard was I've been looking off and on, but then we didn't go there, right? And failing to go there, the third person you've talked to today, we definitely needed to know, what have you found? What prevented you from moving forward? These are all the clues that we need to understand how to help someone get out of their own way to make a decision. And it's so unfortunate that we're just getting it now.
You all have a different plan, different pricing, and things that seem appealing or things that seem to be unnecessarily options that I'm not interested in, and it's hard to sort all this out.
I remember, like the $3,000 plan with us is like a $6,000 plan with anyone else. Yeah, because if you were to have to come out of pocket on average, it's for what you were looking for, it's $7,500. Without us, but with us, it's $2,600.
Well, so after a person gets cremated and they get a bill, then you're going to negotiate it down to 1/3?
Before anything gets billed. I mean, like when we get the invoice, when we get the bill for what they're going to want to charge your family.
But they're going to give you a bill after they've done it already. When you get, it's already done.
We'll basically get a quote. We'll get a quote, is what I meant.
So you're going to get it. So I get an estimate of costs for the funeral home, submit it to you, and then you're going to negotiate with them before they do the cremation.
Yeah, we could do that as well. Or like say, God forbid you pass, right? And then we would instruct your wife to get a quote, or your daughter to get a quote from the funeral home, and then we'll start looking around and calling places up on their behalf to basically get quotes and pricing and everything that they're wanting. We'll do all that for them in the background. And then very shortly after that, within the same day, we'll... This service is free.
This service is provided. But I mean, what you're suggesting is done prior to the cremation.
Yes.
It would be done prior. Right? That's correct.
Okay. So my daughter's got this dead parent, and she's gonna have you shop around for the funeral home that we're gonna use.
Yes.
We basically, once that time comes, she would give a call to us directly. Okay. The first thing that we would do is we would send her the money right away to her bank account. The second thing we would do is, we would basically give her the quotes for the best pricing available in her area, because we would already be on the phone calling these places, right, to offer the best price.
Okay, but that's what I'm saying. Now, you're going to suggest that,
like literally
before the cremation, you're going to try to find her the best deal.
Yes.
We will. Yeah, we will find the best deal.
Oh,
exactly.
Okay. Well, anyway, I don't know if there's anything.
And his aha moment for how that works also shouldn't have happened after we gave quotes, and he's already trying to run away. So whether you have access to an FCGS program or not, it is still so important to do things in a certain way to get a level of engagement, as well as understanding where someone has been. I hope this video teaches you that any step that you skip will always come back to bite you at the end. Thanks for watching. Post a comment if you've learned something, share it with a friend, and I'll see you again on another sales training video.